I bought that lake cabin with my father's last inheritance, a quiet place where I could finally breathe after years of city chaos. But the day I showed up to move in, there was a Lexus in the driveway, a toddler's bike on the porch, and a smug man grilling on my deck. HOA President Karen, clipboard in hand, told me it had been reassigned to her son after a zoning technicality. No notice, no hearing. Just gone. She smiled like I should thank her. That's when I decided, if they wanted war over boundaries, I'd show them how far I could push mine. Literally, I stood there with the keys still in my hand, disbelief, gnawing at my gut, the same keys I'd been handed by the title company 3 weeks ago, the ones I'd guarded like gold. But now, the front door of my cabin was wide open, someone else's laughter spilling from the porch, and the smell of burgers grilling on my barbecue. A kid ran past me barefoot, chasing a dog that barked with the kind of comfort only someone who belonged there could carry. Karen appeared like a storm cloud in a sweater set, flanked by her ever-present clipboard, and that signature tight smile she wore like war paint. "Oh, you must be the previous buyer," she said, not even pretending to be surprised to see me. "Previous?" I asked, stepping toward her. "I bought this property. I have the deed." She tilted her head, smug. "Actually, there was an issue with the zoning that voided your transfer. Common mistake. The lot line runs into community easement. The HOA had the right to reclaim it under Section 14B. But don't worry, it's in good hands. My son and his family needed the space." My jaw locked. "You're telling me you stole my house and gave it to your son?" "Reallocated," she corrected, like that made it any less absurd. "It's all handled. You should have read the bylaws closer." I stared past her at the man flipping burgers on my deck, his face eerily similar to hers, wearing sunglasses, and smirking like he knew exactly who I was. My stomach twisted. This wasn't some clerical mix-up. This was orchestrated. I stormed back to my truck and called the real estate lawyer. He answered on the second ring, his voice uneasy. "Yeah, I just got the paperwork." HOA cited an obscure clause not used in over 2 decades. "They're playing dirty, so what do I do?" "You could take it to court," he said carefully, "but it'll take months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, the property's in limbo. No judge is issuing an injunction for something that's technically in HOA jurisdiction." They timed it just right. Karen had played the long game. She'd seen my offer, waited for the sale too, close, and dug through every line of that HOA charter until she found a clause that let her rip it out from under me. It wasn't about land. It was about power. That night, I drove back to the motel 30 minutes out, the one with flickering neon and stale cigarette air. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about my dad. He loved that lake. We came here every summer when I was a kid, fishing at dawn, skipping stones until sunset. After he passed, this cabin was my way of bringing a piece of him back. And now it had been hijacked by a suburban dictator with a clipboard. The next morning, I showed up at the HOA office. It was a beige building with fake plants and plaques of self-importance. Karen sat behind the desk like a queen on her throne. "This isn't over," I said. She didn't even look up. "You're welcome to file a grievance. The board meets next quarter." I leaned in close. "Quiet. You think you've won, but you just gave the wrong guy a reason to stay." She finally looked up. "Is that a threat?" "No," I smiled. "That's a promise." For the next 2 weeks, I didn't leave town. I rented a room above a bait shop and spent my days digging through every document tied to the HOA. I pulled zoning maps, utility easements, aerial imagery, and land surveys going back 30 years. I attended community meetings, quietly listening. I learned about every fence, flower bed, mailbox, and fire pit that had ever been cited for a violation. And then I found it buried in the original 1984 development plans. My parcel, before it was subdivided, had once included a sliver of unclaimed buffer zone. It wasn't much, but it ran straight through the front lawn of Karen's house. A 25-foot stretch of legal no man's land she'd never bothered to contest because no one ever noticed until now. I filed a request with the county for a revised boundary survey, paid a third-party surveyor to confirm it, and once it cleared, I did something that would have made my dad proud. I bought lumber. The next day, I showed up in a flatbed truck with fencing supplies and a crew I'd hired from the local hardware store. We set up stakes, measured twice, and started building. The fence didn't go around my cabin. It started at the far edge of the property line, the legal one, and crept across Karen's manicured lawn, like ivy made of iron. It cut through her flower beds, divided her sidewalk, and ran directly in front of her son's porch, blocking their perfect lake view. She came running out, shrieking like a fire alarm. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I leaned against a post, hammer in hand. "Just building on my land. Section 9C owner is permitted to install fencing on private parcels not maintained by the HOA. This is harassment," she yelled. "No," I said, smiling. "It's real." Karen's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to reboot a corrupted system. Her face went from pale to flushed in seconds, and then she turned on the crew. "You can't build this. This is illegal. Do you even have permits?" One of the guys, Raoul, didn't even pause his drilling. "Ma'am, we're building on a surveyed parcel. If you've got issues, take it up with the county. I didn't even need to look at her to know she was seething. The sound of the post-hole diggers chewing through her petunias was revenge symphony. Every thunk of the hammer was a little bit of justice. She stormed back inside, probably to call every contact she had, the HOA board, the county commissioner, the sheriff. It didn't matter. I'd already covered every base. The land was legally mine, and as long as I wasn't obstructing a road or utility, they couldn't touch me. By sundown, half the fence was up. A clean, wooden wall, stretching from the waterline to the sidewalk, leaving Karen's once picturesque view blocked by fresh cedar and steel posts. Her son's Lexus, now parked awkwardly beside it, half in shadow. The next morning, she returned, with backup to board members and matching polos and one very tired deputy sheriff. I was sipping coffee in a lawn chair just outside the construction zone. This is a civil matter. The deputy sighed after looking at the survey. As long as he's not trespassing or damaging utilities, I got no jurisdiction. Karen barked. Something about community values, about aesthetics and precedent. But the deputy just tipped his hat and left, muttering, "Should have read the fine print, ma'am." By the end of the week, the fence was complete. Not a single board out of line. It had a custom gate, a locking latch, and a small engraved sign I installed just for her. Asterisk private property. No HOA access without owner consent. Asterisk. That one got her dot suddenly. The woman who'd ruled the community like a dictator found herself boxed in quite literally by her own weapon, legal technicalities. Her backyard still had access to the water, but the front lawn, her pride and joy, was gone, replaced by an eyesore she couldn't control. Her son's guests now had to park 2 streets away and walk through the side path, stepping over gravel and sprinkler heads. Her grandchild's playset was now crammed awkwardly in the shade. But I wasn't done yet. I started attending HOA meetings, every single one. I'd sit in the back, quiet, polite, and wait. Then I'd raise my hand. As the board reviewed the tree trimming violations near Lot 5B, I noticed limbs overhanging community trails. Is there a rule against unapproved patio installations? Because I saw a structure on 4C that violates material codes? Can we discuss financial transparency? The last audit's been overdue. For 14 months, Karen couldn't ignore me. I wasn't disruptive, I was precise. Every question was backed with citations from their own rules. I came with printouts, with photos, with dates, and over time, other homeowners started nodding along. That's when I found the smoking gun. Tucked inside, an HOA budget report was a line item for a landscaping company that billed double the going rate. A little research revealed the company was registered under her nephew's name, a clear conflict of interest. I brought it up in the next meeting with a polite smile. "Karen, would you mind explaining why the HOA pays $2,300 monthly to a vendor linked to your family? That seems irregular." Her face went stiff. One of the board members coughed, another looked down at his hands. "It's not linked. That's a professional business. Registered last year," I added, sliding a copy of the incorporation paperwork across the table, "with your home address as the mailing contact." That was the turning point. The board called an emergency session 2 days later. Karen was asked to step down pending investigation. I watched her walk out of that meeting, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, her face pale and tight, the power she once wielded so easily gone. The very next morning, I visited the cabin. Her son was outside, trying to hang a wind chime. He looked exhausted. "We're moving out next week," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "It's not worth it anymore." I nodded. Probably for the best. He didn't argue, just kept tying knots that wouldn't hold Dot by the time they left. The lawn was patchy, the deck half dismantled, and the grill covered with a tarp that flapped in the wind like a white flag. I walked through the cabin slowly, letting it settle around me. The walls were still stained with smoke from his cheap cigars. The fridge held a single can of root beer, but the bones were still mine. I opened the bedroom window and took a deep breath. The lake glimmered through the trees. The quiet returned. Still, I didn't move in just yet. Instead, I started fixing it up. Quietly, a new coat of paint, refinished floors, cleared brush behind the house where wildflowers grew, and I left the fence exactly where it was, tall, clean, and unmissable. Neighbors came by, curious. Some nodded with respect, others brought coffee or pie. One older man laughed and said, "Never seen anyone beat Karen at her own game. Hell of a thing." I smiled, just defending what's mine. But inside, I knew it wasn't just about the property anymore. It was about drawing a line, not in the dirt, but in principle. The kind of line you defend when no one else will. The kind that reminds people like Karen that power isn't permanent. And fences can go both ways. The strange thing about silence is how loud it becomes when the wrong voice goes missing. With Karen gone, the HOA meetings weren't nearly as chaotic. No barking orders, no passive-aggressive speeches disguised as community updates. People spoke in complete sentences again. There was even laughter. I stayed quiet, still showing up, still watching. I didn't want to lead anything. I just wanted everyone to know that someone was watching now, someone who read every bylaw line for line. A few weeks passed. Then came the fallout. It started with an anonymous flyer, stapled to telephone poles and left in mailboxes, Karen's Kingdom, how one woman spent your HOA fees on family and favors. It quoted my findings word for word, including photos from the budget report and the landscaping company's incorporation file. I hadn't made the flyer, but I didn't need to. Someone else had picked up the torch. The community erupted. One neighbor demanded a full audit. Another called for a recall vote of anyone who'd enabled Karen. Whispers turned into conversations. Conversations became shouting matches. The new interim board had no choice but to open the books. By month's end, a local reporter caught wind of it and ran a story titled, "Power, Property, and the HOA President, who forgot the rules applied to her too." They didn't name me, just mentioned a displaced buyer who'd exposed everything. But people knew. I'd walk into the cafe and get a nod from the barista. At the gas station, the clerk smiled and asked, "You putting up any more fences?" Then one morning, I got a call. "Hi, this is Maria from the county assessor's office. I wanted to confirm a change in ownership filed last week for parcel 129, the lakefront property." My stomach did a double flip. Someone filed a change. Yes, a deed transfer from the HOA to .u, effective immediately. I hung up and drove straight there. When I got to the cabin, the gate creaked open just as it always did. The air smelled like pine and smoke from a distant chimney, but something felt different. I stepped up to the porch, and there it was. An envelope taped to the door with a familiar looping script. *, we made a mistake. The board voted unanimously to reverse the reassignment. The cabin is yours. Consider this closure, and maybe mercy interim HOA chair, on behalf of the community. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just stood there for a long moment, letting it land. The war was over, and I hadn't needed to burn anything down. I just let them bury themselves under their own hypocrisy. Over the next few days, I started moving in for real. Not just repairs, not just visitation, boxers, books, my dad's old fishing gear. A framed photo of us from the summer I turned 12, standing right at this shoreline, sunburned and grinning like fools. I replaced the locks, refinished the porch, and on a quiet Sunday morning, I dismantled the fence. It wasn't about surrender. It was about peace. Neighbors watched as the panels came down, one by one. The lawn, once divided, now looked like any other patch of grass. But something in the neighborhood had shifted. No more Karen, no more power plays. Just people trying, failing, sometimes learning. Then came the knock. It was her. Karen stood at the edge of the porch, her face more human than I'd ever seen it. The clipboard was gone. So was the tight bun and the smug smile. She looked like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. "I heard you took the fence down," she said quietly. "Not much need for it anymore," I replied. She nodded slowly. "You embarrassed me. You stole my house." She winced. I thought I could get away with it. I don't know what I thought, that people would side with me, that the rules didn't matter because I was the one making them. And now, she looked out at the lake. Now I'm living with my sister, and no one at the community events talks to me. My son won't even return my calls. I lost everything. I crossed my arms. "You didn't lose it. You gambled with it, and you lost." She looked down. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I just needed to say it out loud." I gave her a long look. "You've said it, now go." She left without another word. And for the first time, the quiet that followed felt clean. Not like something missing, like something restored. That evening, I sat on the dock with a cold beer and watched the sun dip below the trees. A few ducks paddled by. The wind rustled the cattails. Somewhere behind me, the cabin lights flicked on, warm and golden. I heard footsteps on gravel. I turned out. It was the old man from 2 cabins down, Harold, Vietnam vet. Quiet type. He held a fishing rod in one hand and a six-pack in the other. "Mind some company?" he asked. I scooted over on the dock. "Not at all." We sat in silence for a while before he finally said, "You did something none of us had the guts to do. Not just the fence. The whole damn thing. I just wanted my place back." He chuckled. "Yeah, well, sometimes it takes one person willing to raise hell to remind everyone else they've been living in it." We fished until the stars came out, swapping stories, drinking slowly. And when I went back inside, I didn't lock the door out of habit. I just let it stay open, like maybe the place knew it was finally mine. The next HOA meeting wasn't held in the community hall. It was in the county courthouse, packed with residents, reporters, and a judge who looked like he'd rather be fishing. The investigation into Karen's misuse of funds had escalated. It wasn't just about favoritism anymore. There were invoices for work that was never done, signed checks to ghost vendors, and a paper trail leading right back to her. I sat 3 rows back, no longer anonymous but not the center of attention. The room buzzed with murmurs and shifting eyes. People I'd never spoken to nodded at me, like I was a neighbor again. Or maybe something closer to legend. Karen stood at the front, shoulders drawn in, wearing a gray blazer that looked a size too large. She answered questions in a voice that barely carried. The board, now fully restructured, sat to the side, watching like a jury that already knew the verdict. The judge cleared his throat. It's the court's opinion that the previous HOA administration failed to operate with transparency or ethical oversight. This is not a criminal trial, but the civil implications are clear. Restitution is expected, and the current board is ordered to re-establish bylaws with external audit review annually, effective immediately. He paused, looking at Karen. And you, ma'am, are permanently barred from holding any administrative or fiduciary role within any registered homeowners association in the state of Montana. A quiet gasp rippled through the room. Karen didn't flinch. She just nodded, hands trembling slightly at her sides. Then she walked out. No protests. No defense. Just silence. Outside, reporters swarmed the new board chair for comments. I slipped away, ducking through a side door and out into the golden light of late afternoon. I had no interest in the headlines. They'd already written themselves. Back at the cabin, I found a small box resting on the porch bench. No note, just a bundle of keys and a folded HOA map with 2 words scribbled across it in blue ink. Asterisk, it's yours. Asterisk, I opened the box. Dot inside was the original brass cabin key, the one that came with the deed, not the copy I'd been given. The one I thought was lost during the so-called reassignment. I stared at it for a long moment, then slid it into my pocket. Over the next few weeks, life returned to something close. Too normal. I got used to the creaks in the floorboards, the smell of pine resin in the mornings, and the sound of loons calling out over the lake at dusk. I replaced the old mailbox with one I carved myself. I installed motion lights, repaired the boathouse roof, and planted lavender along the fence line, the one that was no longer needed, but still felt like a boundary worth honoring. And then came the letter. It was from Karen's son, a short note, no apology, just acknowledgement. Asterisk, I didn't know the full story. I should have questioned it. My mother steamrolled everyone, including me. I thought I was protecting my family, but now I realize I was part of the damage. You didn't just get your cabin back, you helped a whole neighborhood see the truth. I respect that. I hope you can enjoy it now. James. Asterisk, I folded the note and tucked it in the back of a drawer, behind a photo of my dad and me with matching tackle boxes and terrible haircuts. One evening, while fixing a loose board on the dock, I saw headlights pull into the neighboring driveway. A young couple stepped out with a toddler on their hip. New owners, moving into the house Karen used to rule from. They waved. I waved back. The woman called out, "You're the guy who built the fence, right?" I smiled, among other things. Well, I read the whole story online. Glad to meet the guy who actually stood up to her. Glad to have you here, I said, meaning it. Later, I opened a cold beer, lit a small fire in the pit by the lake, and watched the sky turn orange. I could still hear the hum of a distant lawnmower, the gentle lapping of water against the shore, the faint hum of life that didn't need drama to feel full. And for the first time since I'd bought the cabin, I felt like I was home, really. Home, not just because the title said so, or because the judge said it was mine, but because I'd earned it, fought for it, held the line. The final chapter didn't end with a bang. It ended with peace. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's not fire or fury or screaming at a locked gate. Sometimes it's quiet, measured, legal. Sometimes it's a fence. Sometimes it's taking it down, if that story hit you like it hit me. If you've ever been underestimated, steamrolled, or just wanted to take your power back the right way, make sure to hit like, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more stories that prove one thing: sometimes the best revenge is done by the book. Thanks for watching.